Welcome to the deep dive.
Hey there.
This is where we take the sources you've given us, articles, notes, research, and really dig in to pull out the key insights and knowledge.
Yep, and this deep dive is specifically for you, based just on the materials you shared.
Our goal is basically to give you that quick path to getting up to speed, cutting through all the noise, especially with something that moves as fast as AWS.
Moves fast is putting it mildly.
Right. So our topic today is exactly that, the pace of change. We're looking at the AWS announcements from just 1 week, May 19th to May 23rd, 2025. This is based on that recent announcement summary you provided.
And the mission is, well, pretty simple but important. Help you get a handle on the key updates from this past week across all sorts of AWS services.
Yeah, we want to go beyond just listing them off. We'll try to touch on the technical side, the implications, and the actual benefits for your work.
And just to give you a sense of scale, that summary covers 39 updates.
39 in just 5 days.
Exactly. It really shows that pace of innovation. Honestly, keeping track feels like a full-time job sometimes.
No kidding. So let's dive in. What stood out?
Okay, let's start with compute and containers. Saw a few interesting things there this week.
Sounds good. What's first?
Amazon ECS, the Elastic Container Service. They've increased the maximum size for a container's exit reason message.
Oh, okay. From what to what?
From 255 characters up to 1024.
Okay, that sounds, well, maybe like a small detail, but I bet it's actually quite helpful.
It really is, yeah. Especially when things inevitably go wrong.
Right.
That exit reason. It's often the very first clue you get about why a container stopped or failed.
Right. And if it gets cut off at 255 characters...
You could be missing the crucial part, the actual error detail.
So having the full message means less time guessing or, digging through logs, trying to piece it all together.
Exactly. Faster debugging, more complete details right there in the Describe Tasks API output or in the AWS Management Console.
Makes sense. Any specific requirements for that?
Yeah. You need to be using Fargate Platform version 1.4.0 or newer.
Okay.
Or if you're running on EC2 instances, you need the ECS agent version 1.92.0 or later.
Got it. A small change, but sounds like a real quality of life improvement for operators.
Definitely improves the experience when you're troubleshooting those container issues.
All right, next up, EC2 Mac instances. They now support configurable system integrity protection settings, SIP settings.
Yes, this is a pretty big deal for flexibility if you're doing macOS development or testing or, CI/CD on EC2 Mac.
How so? Wasn't SIP always just on?
Pretty much, yeah. It was fixed in a secure state. Now you actually have the option to temporarily disable it.
Why would you want to disable SICP? Isn't it a security feature?
It absolutely is a security feature.
Yeah.
And normally you want it enabled.
Yeah.
But for some specific development tasks.
Like what?
Like installing certain system extensions, maybe working with DriverKit, or sometimes for specific kinds of performance testing that need, lower level system access. Temporarily disabling SIP is sometimes necessary for those.
Ah, I see. So this update unblocks those workflows on EC2 Mac.
Exactly. You get the flexibility when you need it for development, but you can still easily re-enable SIP afterwards for security or standard testing.
And that's available for both types of Mac instances.
Yep, both the Intel and the Apple Silicon families, and all the regions where EC2 Mac is available.
Okay, that's some important flexibility there.
Yeah.
Shifting gears a bit, EC2 high memory instances saw an expansion.
That's right, the U1 instances, the ones with 18 terabytes of memory.
18 terabytes.
Yeah, the U18TB 1.112 X large. Those are now available in the U.S. East Ohio region.
Okay, and those are mainly for really big SAP ANA workloads, right?
Primarily, yes. They're certified for SAP ANA, really designed for those huge in-memory database workloads.
So adding another key region for those massive enterprise apps?
Exactly. And they're available with on-demand pricing and also savings plans.
Good to have options. What about EC2 scheduled events? Something about customer-initiated reboots.
Yeah, this is a really practical improvement for handling instance maintenance. When AWS sends you a notification about a scheduled reboot for an instance.
Usually for underlying hardware maintenance, yeah.
Right. Before, you basically had to wait for AWS's scheduled time window. Now, if you get that notification, you can choose to reboot the instance yourself at a time that's more convenient for you before the scheduled event actually happens.
And doing that preemptive reboot actually takes care of the scheduled event.
Correct. When you reboot it, AWS automatically migrates the instance to different healthy hardware in the background, and that clears the pending scheduled event notification for you.
Oh, that gives you way more control over the timing of that disruption.
Exactly. It's opted in by default for Nitro instances that don't have local instance storage attached, and you can trigger it via the console or the API.
Nice. Much better way to manage those necessary maintenance reboots. Okay, last one in this compute section. The Amazon EKS Dashboard is now generally available.
Yeah, this is a really helpful addition for anyone managing Kubernetes clusters on AWS, especially at scale.
What does it give you?
It provides a centralized, multi-cluster view of your EKS infrastructure. And the really key part is that it works not just across different AWS regions, but also across different AWS accounts within your AWS organization.
Oh, wow. Centralized visibility across accounts and regions for EKS. That sounds incredibly useful for, like, governance and operations.
It really is. It pulls together key insights into one place. Things like, what Kubernetes versions are you running? Are they still supported? What are your node group AMI versions, add-on versions, all that stuff.
So you don't have to constantly jump between accounts or regions just to get a high-level picture of your K8's fleet.
Right. It should drastically cut down on that operational overhead and make it way easier to spot potential issues like, clusters running on unsupported K8's versions.
Yeah, definitely. Where do you access that?
You access it from the S East 1 region, but it aggregates the metadata from clusters across all the commercial regions. And there's no extra charge for using the dashboard itself.
That's great. A really solid tool for anyone managing distributed EKS.
Okay, that covers the main compute and container updates. Quite a mix there. Ready to move on to networking?
Yep, let's do it. Networking's always foundational. What changed there?
First, Amazon Route 53 profiles expanded its reach. It's now available in a few more regions.
Which ones?
Asia Pacific Thailand, Mexico Central, and Asia Pacific Malaysia.
Okay. Can you remind us quickly what Route 53 profiles actually does?
Sure. Think of it as a way to standardize your DNS configurations across your environment. You create a profile that holds standard settings, things like private hosted zones, maybe some resolver rules, DNS firewall groups.
Right.
Then you can take that single profile and apply it to lots of different VPCs.
Even across different accounts?
Yeah, if you share the profile using AWS Resource Access Manager RAM.
Ah, okay. So it's like a template for DNS settings you can stamp onto VPCs easily.
Exactly. Really simplifies managing DNS consistently, especially if you have a complex setup with lots of VPCs and accounts.
Got it. Also in networking, something about EC2 Public DNS names and IPv6.
Yes. So for EC2 instances or ENIs that are enabled for IPv6, their standard public DNS name can now resolve to their IPv6 address via an AAA record.
Oh, okay. Before, it only resolved to the IPv4 address.
Correct. If you had an IPv6 only instance or just wanted public IPv6 access to a dual stack one using the standard host name, you had to either use the IP directly or set up custom Route 53 records.
So this just makes it simpler, easier to use the standard EC2 host names, even for IPv6.
Right. It kind of removes a small hurdle for adopting or using IPv6 more broadly. Makes it a bit more seamless.
And that's live everywhere.
Available in all commercial and GovCloud regions, uses your existing VPC settings.
Cool. And AWS Organizations also got some IPv6 attention.
It did. The AWS Organizations service itself now supports IPv6 dual-stack endpoints.
Meaning you can connect to the organization's API using IPv6.
Yeah, if your client prefers IPv6, you can connect over the public internet using it. The regular IPv4 endpoints are still there too, of course, for compatibility.
Makes sense for a global management service to support both.
Yep. Available in commercial, GovCloud, and China regions.
Okay. And one more networking update. AWS site-to-site VPN tunnel endpoint lifecycle control. Bit of a mouthful.
Yeah. It's now available in the AWS Europe Milan region.
What does that feature do again?
It's all about giving you more control over the timing of routine VPN tunnel maintenance that AWS needs to perform.
So you get advance notice and some say when the maintenance happens.
Exactly. Helps you schedule it during a less impactful time for your network traffic, minimizing disruption.
Good to see that rolling out to more places. Okay, that covers networking. Let's move on to the database world. Always a busy category.
Definitely. First up, CloudWatch Database Insights has added support for Amazon Aurora PostgreSQL Limitless databases.
Database Insights, that's the tool for deep diving into database performance, right? Looking at the workload inside the engine.
Precisely. It helps DBAs, devs, ops folks diagnose performance issues quickly by bringing metrics and logs together. Now it supports Aurora Limitless,
which is their horizontally scaling PostgreSQL offering.
Right. So Database Insights now gives you specific visibility into how your workload is actually being spread across the different shard groups in that limitless setup.
Yeah, understanding that load distribution seems critical for optimizing a sharded database like Limitless.
Absolutely. It comes with pre-built dashboards, guided troubleshooting, all tailored for Limitless. It's available where Limitless is, and the pricing for this part of Database Insights is based on ACU's Aurora capacity units, which is how Limitless is metered anyway.
Okay. Next, a performance boost for Aurora Global Database.
A significant one, yeah. They've reduced the typical cross-region switchover time.
For read-write operations.
Yep, down to typically under 30 seconds.
Wow, that's fast for shifting the primary writer to a whole different region.
It is. Aurora Global Database is great for DR and global reads because it replicates across regions. A planned switchover is when you deliberately move the primary role. Getting that down under 30 seconds is a huge improvement for your RTO recovery time objective during those planned events, or potentially unplanned ones too.
Big win for availability in BCDR. Any specific versions needed?
Yeah, you need recent versions of Aurora MySQL, like 3.09 plus, and recent Aurora PostgreSQL versions too, like 16.8, 15.whole, and a few others listed in the announcement.
And you just get this improvement by upgrading? No extra config?
Exactly. Just upgrade to a supported version, and you benefit from the faster switchovers.
Nice. And staying with Aurora Global Database, it can now handle more secondary regions.
Yes, they doubled the limit. You can now have up to 10 secondary region clusters associated with the primary.
Up from 5 before.
Right. So that gives you even more flexibility for scaling reads globally or building out more complex disaster recovery topologies across more geographic locations.
More scale, more resilience. Makes sense. What about Amazon RDS custom for Oracle?
They've added support for new instance types, the R7i and M7i instances.
Ah, the newer generation instances. Powered by 4th gen Intel Xeons.
Correct. And they're significantly larger than the previous gen, up to 50% bigger, going all the way up to a 48x large size.
So if you're using RDS Custom to manage your own Oracle licenses BYOL, you now have access to much beefier hardware.
Exactly. Both for Oracle Enterprise Edition and Standard Edition 2. You can launch new instances on these types or modify existing ones.
Okay. RDS in general also got an update to make lifecycle management easier.
Yes. There's now API and AWS CLI support to easily retrieve the engine lifecycle support dates.
Oh, that's handy. Before you had to go digging through docs to find the standard support end date or extended support dates for specific major versions.
Pretty much, yeah. For RDS MySQL, MariaDB, PostgreSQL, and both Aurora MySQL and PostgreSQL, now you can get that information programmatically or via the CLI.
Centralized view of support dates. Super useful for planning upgrades and staying compliant.
Definitely streamlines that whole operational process.
Okay, what about AWS DMS, the database migration service, something called Data Resync?
Right. This is focused on improving the accuracy of migrations. DMS has a validation feature that checks for differences between the source and target databases during a migration. This new Data Resync feature can actually automatically correct some of those inconsistencies it finds during validation.
Like if it finds a missing row on the target, it can try to copy it over.
That's the idea. Or if values don't match. It does this during both the initial full load phase and the ongoing change data capture CDC phase, using the settings you've already configured for the migration task.
That sounds like it could save a lot of manual cleanup work after migration.
Potentially, yes. Right now, it supports migrations from Oracle and SQL Server sources to PostgreSQL targets. And you need DMS Replication Engine version 3.6.1 or newer.
Interesting feature. Amazon RDS for Oracle also got an update for credential management, the AWS Secrets Manager.
Yes, specifically for Oracle databases using the multi-tenant architecture. Container databases, CDBs, with pluggable databases, PDBs, inside.
Right.
You can now use AWS Secrets Manager to manage the database credentials for those PDBs.
Which gives you all the usual Secrets Manager benefits, right? Automated password rotation, IAM control over access, KMS encryption.
And crucially, getting plain text passwords out of your application code or config files.
Standard security best practice.
Exactly. And the integration seems pretty deep. Even RDS management tasks like restores or point-in-time recovery will automatically use the credentials stored in Secrets Manager.
That's slick. Available where RDS, Oracle, and Secrets Manager are.
Yep, in all regions where both services are available, a really solid security enhancement.
Okay. What about MariaDB? Any updates there?
Just minor version updates. Amazon RDS for MariaDB now supports community MariaDB versions 10.5.29 and 10.6.22.
Standard stuff, security fixes, bug fixes, maybe some performance tweaks. Always good to stay current.
Right. And AWS recommends using features like automatic minor version upgrades or RDS managed blue-green deployments to apply these updates safely.
Makes sense. Okay, last one for databases. DynamoDB Local is now usable within AWS Cloud Shell.
Yeah, this is a great little developer productivity boost. Cloud Shell gives you that in-browser command line for AWS.
Right, no local setup needed.
And now, right inside that same Cloud Shell environment, you can start up and use DynamoDB Local, the downloadable version, but running right there.
Oh, nice. So you don't have to download or install DynamoDB Local or even the AWS CLI separately if you just want to do some quick testing against DynamoDB.
Exactly. You can start it with a simple alias command, dynamod local. Then you just use your regular AWS CLI commands, but point them to the local endpoint, like endpoint URL localhost 0.8000.
Perfect for quick dev cycles, testing data models, iterating on code without hitting the actual service or incurring costs.
Totally. Just makes it easier to work with DynamoDB during development.
That wraps up a pretty packed database section. Performance, scaling, security, developer experience, lots going on. Let's shift over to AM and data, always a hot area.
For sure. Amazon Bedrock, their foundation model service, had quite a few announcements. First, several popular models achieved FedRAMP High and DoD IL-45 approval.
Okay, that's big for government and public sector use cases. Which models are we talking about?
Anthropic's Claude 3.5 Sonnet V1 and Claude 3 Haiku. Also Meta's Llama 3 models, both the 8B and 70B parameter versions.
And it's not just the models, right? Some Bedrock features, too.
Correct. Key features like Bedrock agents, guardrails, knowledge bases, and the module evaluation tools are also covered by these approvals within the AWS GovCloud US regions.
So that really opens the door for federal agencies with those high compliance needs to leverage these newer Gen AI capabilities securely.
Exactly. It's a significant enabler for adoption in those sensitive environments.
Also in Bedrock, Anthropic's latest models are now available. Claude 4.
Yeah, Claude Opus 4 and Claude Sonnet 4. These are positioned as their next generation models.
How do they differ?
Opus 4 is billed as the most powerful, really good at complex stuff like coding, multi-step tasks, and what they call agentic AI.
Agentic AI, meaning it can kind of act like an agent, breaking down tasks.
Yeah, taking a goal, figuring out the steps, executing them, maybe self-correcting. Sonnet 4 is the mid-size one, aimed more at high-volume tasks, balancing quality, cost, and speed. They describe both as hybrid reasoning models.
Hybrid reasoning, what does that imply?
It suggests they might have different modes, like a quick mode for simple answers and a more extended, deeper thinking mode for complex reasoning, potentially using different internal approaches based on the query. It's about pushing the boundaries of what these models can do.
Interesting. More powerful tools in the Bedrock toolbox, available through the usual ways.
Yep, console, API, SDK.
Okay. And sticking with Bedrock, but shifting to operations, new CloudWatch metrics for Bedrock agents.
Yes, this is a really important one for actually monitoring and managing AI agents you build with Bedrock. You now get a whole set of runtime metrics pushed to CloudWatch.
For the agent invocation calls.
Right, for invoke agent and invoke inline agent. You get things like invocation counts, detailed latency breakdowns, total time, time to first token, even the latency of the underlying model call.
Wow, great.
Plus token usage counts and error rates. And you can filter all this by the operation, the model ID used, the specific agent alias.
That gives you real visibility into how your agents are performing, where bottlenecks might be, helps with troubleshooting and optimization.
Totally. You can set CloudWatch alarms on these metrics too. It really elevates agents from being a bit of a black box to something you can properly monitor. Available in all Bedrock regions.
Very useful. Okay, moving slightly away from the core models, Amazon Bedrock Data Automation, or BDA, it now supports video.
Yeah, specifically generating custom insights from videos using something they call video blueprints.
BDA helps automate insight extraction from unstructured stuff, right? Documents, images, audio.
And now video too. The key here is the custom insights part. With video blueprints, you can tell BDA what you want to find or generate from a video, not just rely on its standard outputs.
So you could ask it to, like, summarize specific scenes or tag certain actions or identify objects based on a description you give it.
Exactly. You define what you need using natural language, specify the output format you want. You can use pre-built blueprints or create your own.
That sounds powerful for unlocking structured data from video content, maybe for feeding into other Gen AI apps or analytics.
Precisely. Makes video a much more accessible data source for automated analysis. It supports various video types, and they also mention some improvements to standard logo detection and IAB taxonomy classification. available in all regions where BDA is supported.
Cool. And finally, for this AML section, the next generation of Amazon SageMaker landed in another region.
Yes, it's now available in AWS Europe, Stockholm.
And this next-gen SageMaker is positioned as that unified hub for data analytics AI.
Right. It includes the unified SageMaker Studio interface, bringing together data discovery, model building, GenAI app dev, data processing, SQL analytics, all in one place.
Plus things like SageMaker Lakehouse for data access and SageMaker Catalog via Data Zone for governance.
Correct. So expanding that comprehensive platform vision to the Stockholm region.
All right, that's a lot of movement in AML and data, as expected. Let's switch focus now to management, governance, and security. Always critical for running things well on AWS.
Absolutely. First, AWS Control Tower released a new enabled controls view.
Control Tower helps manage multi-account setups. What does this new view provide?
In bigger Control Tower environments, figuring out exactly which guardrails, which preventative or detective controls were active on which OUs or accounts could be a bit tricky. You might have had to click around a lot.
Right.
This new view gives you a single dashboard that shows all the controls that are currently enabled across your entire organization, governed by Control Tower.
Ah, a centralized view of your governance posture. That sounds way simpler for tracking compliance and managing things.
Definitely. You can easily filter it by OU, by control behavior, preventive detective, severity, implementation status. You can even see controls grouped by behavior right from the main dashboard. Much better visibility. Available in all Control Tower regions.
Good improvement. Next, Amazon Managed Service for Prometheus AMP got some query insight and control features.
Yeah, Prometheus is super popular for monitoring, and AMP is the managed version. But sometimes, especially with lots of data, certain PromQL queries can be, well, expensive, resource-intensive, slow.
Right. Complex queries can hit performance.
So this update gives you tools to first identify those expensive queries and then potentially control their execution.
How do you identify them?
You can monitor queries based on a metric called Query Samples Processed, or QSP. It's a measure of query complexity. Queries over a threshold you set can be logged to CloudWatch.
What gets logged?
The query string itself, where it came from, things like that. Helps you understand who or what is running costly queries.
And the control part.
You can actually set warning or error thresholds using API headers when you run a query. Set an error threshold, and if the query is estimated to exceed it, AMP can actually prevent it from running, protecting the system. Or just set a warning.
So governance and cost performance control for Prometheus querying.
Basically, yes. Helps manage the impact of potentially inefficient queries. Available wherever AMP is GA.
Makes sense. Now something about quantum resistance. AWS Transfer Family.
Yes. For SFTP connections specifically, they've announced support for ML-KEM quantum-resistant key exchange.
ML-KEM. That's one of the post-quantum algorithms.
Correct. It's module lattice-based key exchange mechanism, standardized as FIPS 203. The idea is to protect against the future threat of harvest now, decrypt later.
Where attackers grab encrypted data today, hoping to decrypt it years from now with a powerful quantum computer.
Exactly. So Transfer Family SFTP endpoints can now use new security policies that are PQ hybrid.
Hybrid meaning?
They combine a classical key exchange algorithm, like ECDH, with this new post-quantum algorithm, ML-KEM. So you get protection from both. If either one holds up against future attacks, your session key is protected.
A belt-and-suspenders approach for future-proofing security.
Kind of, yeah. It's a proactive step. You need a compatible SFTP client to use it, obviously.
Yeah.
They also noted that older experimental PQ methods based on Kyber will be removed, so ML-KEM is the way forward here, available in all Transfer Family regions.
Important security hardening for the long term. Okay, AWS cost anomaly detection got better alerting.
Yeah, through integration with AWS user notifications.
So cost anomaly detection finds weird spikes in spending.
Right. And now, instead of just basic alerts, you can leverage user notifications, which connects via EventBridge, to set up much more sophisticated alerting rules.
How so? More flexible.
Much more. You can create rules based on service, account, cost allocation tags, really fine-tune things. Receive alerts not just via email, but also AWS chatbot, so Slack or Teams, or the AWS console mobile app. Plus, you get a centralized history of notifications.
And you can set different thresholds for different things, like higher tolerance for ML cost spikes, lower for stable services.
Exactly. Helps reduce noise, ensures the right alerts go to the right places via the right channels, using centrally managed contacts. Really improves the actionability of those cost anomaly alerts. Available in all commercial regions except GovCloud China.
Better cost control through smarter alerting.
Got it.
Got it. AWS Code Build added new IAM condition keys.
Yes. Code Build is the managed build service. These new keys let you get much more granular with IAM policies that control who can modify code build project configurations.
Controlling things like network settings or compute types used by builds.
Precisely. For example, you could use the code build.vpcconfig.vpcid key to enforce that all builds must run within a specific VPC.
For network security.
Or use code build.source.buildspec to maybe prevent developers from changing the build commands defined in the build spec file.
Ensuring standard build processes.
Or use code build.configuration.instance to restrict builds to only use certain approved instance types, maybe for cost control.
So enforcing security, operational standards, cost policies right at the IAM level for code build.
Exactly. Much finer-grained governance over your build environment. Available in all code build regions.
Okay. AWS CloudWatch Synthetics, the Canary monitoring service, got some updates too. Safe updates and retries.
Yep. Synthetics lets you run scripts, canaries, to simulate user workflows or check endpoints. These updates make managing those canaries safer and more reliable.
Safe canary updates, does that mean testing changes before deploying?
Yes. You can now do a dry run of changes to your canary's script or config. Test things like runtime version compatibility before you actually apply the change to the live scheduled canary. Helps avoid breaking your monitoring.
That's smart. And automatic retries.
If a scheduled canary run fails, Synthetics can now automatically retry it one or more times.
Why is that useful?
It helps distinguish between a real, persistent problem with the application you're monitoring versus just a temporary glitch like a brief network blip that caused the first check to fail. Reduces false alarms.
Makes sense. Are the dry runs and retries charged?
Yeah, they're priced just like regular canary runs. These features are available in all commercial regions.
Okay. And last one for this section. Amazon Inspector. Enhancing container security. Mapping images to running containers.
Yes, this is a really practical and valuable security update. Inspector scans container images in ECR for vulnerabilities.
Right.
But just knowing an image in your registry has a vulnerability isn't the full picture. What you really want to know is that vulnerable image actually running anywhere right now?
Connecting the vulnerability scan result to the live workload.
Exactly. Inspector now automatically figures out this mapping. It can show you which of your ECR images are actively being used in running ECS tasks or EKS pods.
So you can see vulnerable images that are actually deployed.
Yes, and you see when it was last used, which clusters it's running on. This lets security and ops teams prioritize patching efforts on the vulnerabilities that pose the most immediate risk to running applications.
Shifts the focus from just scanning everything to fixing what matters most now.
Precisely. Much more actionable intelligence. This data shows up in inspector findings, resource coverage views, and gets pushed to EventBridge. You can even configure how long Inspector tracks an image after it was last seen running.
Any extra cost for this?
No. It's included for customers already using ECR continuous scanning within Inspector. Available in all commercial and GovCloud regions where Inspector is offered. A really solid improvement for container security posture management.
Okay, that's a hefty list for management, governance, and security. Lots of improvements in visibility, control, and prioritizing real risks. Let's quickly cover media services and a couple of other miscellaneous updates.
Sounds good. First, AWS Deadline Cloud Monitor added multi-language support.
Deadline Cloud is for managing rendering workloads, right? VFX, animation.
Yep. The monitor part, which shows job status and info, now speaks more languages. Chinese, traditional simplified, English, French, German, Indonesian, Italian, Japanese, Korean, Portuguese, Brazil, and Turkish.
Makes it easier for global teams managing renders.
Exactly. It tries to match your system language, but you can set it manually too. Available wherever Deadline Cloud is.
Okay. AWS HealthImaging, the medical imaging service, had a couple of updates. First, DICOMweb search and better data management.
Right. HealthImaging is for storing and accessing medical images, usually in DICOM format. This update improves how it handles and lets you search that data.
DICOMweb is the standard for web access, and QIDO-RS is the query part.
Correct. So HealthImaging now automatically organizes image, sets you import into the standard DICOM structure of studies and series. It also handles merging duplicate instances automatically. And the new QID-RS search support makes it easier to find data using those standard DICOM query parameters.
So better organization and standardized searching.
Yeah. The automatic organization simplifies managing images at scale, reduces post-processing work. The standard search improves interoperability with medical viewers and other systems. They also mention lower latency for image retrieval, WRS, and faster import for really large images, like digital pathology, Available in U.S. East Virginia, U.S. West Oregon, Sydney, and Ireland. And it's EPA eligible.
Got it. And a related health imaging update about metadata.
Yes. Building on the DICOMweb support, you can now retrieve metadata for all the individual instances within a DICOM series using just a single API call.
Why is that a big deal?
Because a single series, think of a CT scan, can have hundreds or thousands of individual image instances. Fetching metadata for each one separately was slow and potentially costly. This single API call makes getting that series-level metadata much more efficient.
Useful for clinical viewers, AI training, research.
Exactly. Anywhere you need the metadata for a whole set of related images. Consistent low latency, simpler integration. Available in the same regions.
Okay, back to Deadline Cloud, briefly support for Foundry Nuke 16.
Yep. Nuke is a major compositing tool in VFX. This just means users can now leverage the latest features in Nuke version 16 while using Deadline Cloud to manage their render jobs, available wherever Deadline Cloud is.
Straightforward update. And one for AWS Marketplace Sellers, about payments.
Yeah, this is more on the business side. For sellers using certain AWS Marketplace entities, AWS Inc., EMEA, OUJP specifically, they can now receive funds even if the buyer only makes a partial payment on an invoice.
Oh, so the seller doesn't have to wait for the entire invoice to be paid before getting any money.
Correct. As the buyer makes partial payments, the seller receives corresponding disbursements based on their schedule. Helps seller cash flow for those transactions. They also improved reporting so sellers can track this.
Useful financial tweak for sellers. Okay, nearly there. Let's cover service lifecycle changes. Always important to know what's being deprecated or ending support.
Absolutely. AWS gave an update this week, stressing that documentation is available for migration paths.
Let's run through the list from the summary. Any services closing to new customers soon?
Yes. Amazon TimeStream for live analytics. Access for new customers closes on June 20th, 2025. Existing customers can keep using it, though.
Okay. Now, services where end of support was announced, meaning action is needed to plan migration.
It's a fairly long list this time. Includes Amazon Pinpoint,
Marketing and Comm service,
AWS IQ,
connecting with experts,
AWS IoT Analytics, AWS IoT Events,
IoT data processing and event handling,
AWS SimSpace Weaver,
large-scale spatial simulations,
AWS Panorama,
computer vision at the edge,
Amazon Inspector Classic,
the older version of Inspector,
Amazon Connect Voice ID,
voice biometrics for contact centers,
and AWS DMS Fleet Advisor.
database migration discovery tool. Wow, quite a few diverse services there. If you use any of those, definitely time to check the official docs for timelines and migration options.
Absolutely.
And finally, any services that have already reached end of support and are gone.
Two mentioned, AWS Private 5G and AWS Data Sync Discovery.
Okay. Good reminder to stay on top of those lifecycle announcements.
Definitely crucial for long-term planning.
Now, regional expansions. We mentioned several services expanding throughout the discussion.
Right, Route 53 profiles, SageMaker, EC2 High Memory, the VPN Lifecycle Control.
Anything else major?
Yes, Amazon MSK Managed Streaming for Apache Kafka is now available for provisioned clusters in 2 new regions, Asia-Pacific Thailand and Mexico Central.
Bringing managed Kafka to those locations.
Exactly.
Okay, and the very last category, service version updates. We have one for MSK as well.
We do. Amazon MSK added support for Apache Kafka version 4.0 for provisioned clusters.
The latest major Kafka release, what are the highlights of 4.0?
Key things include the new consumer rebalance protocol becoming generally available, a requirement bump to Java 17, which brings its own security and performance benefits, bug fixes, and notably, the deprecation of Zookeeper for metadata management. Kafka is moving towards Craft internally, although MSK handles that transition for you.
So you can launch new MSK provisioned clusters on 4.0.x or upgrade existing ones?
Yep. You can select 4.0 when creating a cluster, or use MSK's in-place rolling update mechanism to upgrade existing supported clusters.
Yeah.
MSK manages the broker updates process.
Got it. Whew. Okay, 39 updates. That really was a torrent, wasn't it? Covering compute, networking databases, AML, security management, dev tools, media, even service life cycles.
It's quite the testament to the pace, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And many of these updates, even the ones that seem small, like that ECS message size increase or the RDS minor versions,
Right.
they collectively add up. They improve debugging, they simplify management, they bolster security, boost performance, increase availability. It's constant refinement across the board.
Yeah, you can definitely see themes, like better observability seems key. CloudWatch getting deeper into databases and Bedrock agents, synthetics getting smarter with retries.
And enhanced governance and management, too. Control Tower's new view, the AMP query controls, those code build IAM keys, RDS, making lifecycle dates easier to find.
Plus, stronger security inspector mapping containers, Transfer Family looking ahead to quantum resistance, RDS for Oracle integrating with Secrets Manager.
And, of course, the relentless push in AML capabilities and just general expansion into more regions.
It really makes you think. Looking at this sheer volume, this constant flow of updates, even just from 1 week, it leads to a final thought, maybe for you, the listener.
How might all these seemingly separate weekly improvements, the big ones and the small ones, actually shape your cloud architecture and your operational practices over, say, the next year or two?
Yeah, are there opportunities hiding in these updates? Maybe ones you didn't even realize existed before we talked about them today, to simplify what you do, make things more secure, or scale more effectively? Where do these new capabilities fit into your longer-term plans?
Something to consider. We've tried to pull out the key points from the summary you provided for this week. As always, we definitely encourage you to check out the linked documentation from the original source for the deep technical dives on the specific updates that matter most to your work.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Yep. Until next time.